I had really thrown a rather emotional fit walking out of that prison because they were treating it like the same old goodbye. And I knew that if everything didn't go our way, they would live one more day after Robbie and I left. So I started wailing one more day to live, and I just wailed that all the way out of the prison cell.
Bloch reads to reporters what the Rosenbergs have written to the president.
We told you the truth. We are innocent. The truth does not change. We now again solemnly declare our innocence.
June 17th, from Douglas, a stay of execution. Nobody will die yet.
On our way back from the Supreme Court, having gotten the stay on Fike Farmers' points, we didn't care how we got it or whatever, because time was life. So on the way back to the hotel, we bought a very large bottle of scotch, and we're getting ready to celebrate.
When Justice Douglas granted the stay, there were meetings in the Department of Justice. There was an application made to the Chief Justice to reconvene the court.
June 18th, the Supreme Court does reconvene, just long enough to overrule Douglas. June 19th, the Rosenbergs will die tonight unless the president says no. He is the only one who can. Finally, Eisenhower speaks, though indirectly.
The following is part of a statement just issued by the President of the United States. I can only say that by immeasurably increasing the chances of atomic war, the Rosenbergs may have condemned to death tens of millions of innocent people all over the world. I will not intervene in this matter.
The news reaches New York, where in Union Square, a celebration becomes a death watch. And New Jersey?
We're watching a baseball game, and they kept interrupting the baseball game with news bulletins. First, the Supreme Court overturned Douglas's stay. Then, very quickly, Eisenhower denies clemency. And then, horrendously, there was even a further blow. The warden announced that reporters should come early because they were making the execution early.
They didn't want to have the execution take place in violation of the Jewish Sabbath.
Rabbi Irving Kozlow, the Jewish chaplain at Sing Sing.
The function of the chaplain was to prepare them spiritually and also give them some understanding of what would take place. They're frightened. I believe frightened to death. Everything that would occur, every detail, was gone through with him. For example, he was given a haircut. He was frightened. I told him a haircut was to prepare him for the metal piece on his head. A slit made in his pants. Well, that was for the electrode placed on his foot. I've never met a person in my experience that wasn't frightened of dying.
But at 8 p.m., die they will unless something happens. All phone lines are open. The Rosenbergs hope for a miracle. The FBI hopes for a confession.
We regarded Julius as a more apt candidate to cooperate with us than Ethel. We thought that Ethel was the stronger-minded person when it came down to facing death. We really didn't want either one of them to die. What we wanted was for them to confess and to name their accomplices.
It's almost 8, no confessions, and now, no more time.
Neither of them said anything. There was no expression on their faces. Mrs. Rosenberg approached the electric chair, and then she suddenly turned away from it and toward Mrs. Evans, and they kissed each other. The executions took place rapidly, except that in Mrs. Rosenberg's case, she required 2 more charges than her husband had. The customary number is 3, and in her case, it required 5.
As a human being, I felt that justice was done, that I worked long and hard on this case, and that the government's position was 100% correct.
I walked in the house, and there were all these adults there, and I just looked at them, and I said, what happened? And nobody would answer me directly, and so I knew that that was it. They were dead. I was really incapable of reacting, really, so I basically sat down and very dry-eyed just looked at my hands. And my friend piped up, you're taking it just like a man, Mike, who he was my age, too. And the woman who we were staying with hugged me and said, "You'll stay here with us." And I thought, well, yes, I will.
But the young children, oh my brothers, they are weeping bitterly. They are weeping in the playtime of the others, in the country of the free. Lines from Elizabeth Barrett Browning. I thank you from a full heart. God bless you all. Lines from another Elizabeth, Queen Elizabeth II. Come back to June of 1953 for a coronation and another crowning glory.
Come back to Dangerous Assumptions, spring 1953, when our world continues.
Welcome back to the Dangerous Assumptions of spring 1953. Like sex and Winston Churchill. This spring, this legendary English bulldog is to have knighthood conferred upon him by Britain's monarch. But when asked about the future role of women later on, he says it will be the same, I trust, as it has been since the days of Adam and Eve. 3 possible answers. 1, when it comes to Eve, Churchill knows something we don't. 2, when it comes to Britain's monarch, we know something Churchill doesn't. 3, when it comes to women, all assumptions are dangerous, especially in 1953. Start there.
Jacqueline Cochran at 43 broke the sound barrier. Claire Booth Luce at 50 became our first woman ambassador to a major nation, posted to Italy. In London, 27-year-old Queen Elizabeth Alexandra Mary was about to be crowned. And across the sea, this old colony caught a case of coronation fever.
You act proud and I'll act prouder. You sing loud and I'll sing louder. Tonight we're setting the woods on fire.
A woman from Texas was so excited that she wrote Elizabeth a letter.
I said, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, arriving May the 30th, would appreciate, need accommodations. Please advise. We'll see you on arrival in London. Signed it, Louise Cochran, 8148 Eastern Street, Houston, Texas.
The Queen put her up in Kensington Palace, and Miss Cochran was among the rain-soaked millions on the coronation route.
The moment when the Queen passed built up. We could hear the cheers of the crowd over the loudspeakers as she passed various other points along the processional way.
Frances Booth was an American student visiting in London.
Finally, this magnificent coach and these great horses appeared round the bend and came down Hyde Park towards us. And there she was. She was very young and very beautiful and probably rather scared.
We had 15 cameras on the route and 5 cameras in the Abbey.
Peter Dimmick was in charge of production for the BBC's black and white telecast.
The ceremony itself was quite spectacular. Remember, this is the first time that the coronation from Westminster Abbey had ever been televised.
Will you solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the Union of South Africa, Pakistan, and Ceylon, and of your possessions according to their respective laws and customs?
I solemnly promise so to do.
I was tipped off from Buckingham Palace in the morning that Prince Charles, hopefully, would come in to see his mother crowned. And sure enough, just before the moment of crowning, he was brought into the Abbey.
Church bells all over London began to ring, and we heard the Archbishop's voice through this thunder. And the guns were so close to us, the ground moved.